Hi, this is the last part in the Skurge series, and for the final part of the video, we are going to be doing the two final props, one of which is a stage prop, that's the Bifrost stand, and the, of course, sword that goes into it. I think it's called a Hofund. I've just been calling it Heimdall's sword. And I'm kind of combining these two because both of these projects involved a little bit of a collaboration with some friends. So if you've seen pictures of this, you probably know that I did enter Skurge in a contest. So if you're curious about how collaborations and costume contests work, we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Now, before I say anything else, that's right, if you've been here for a while and you are wondering what the hell is going on, I rebranded. And a lot of people have been asking me, why did you change your name? Well, I'll tell you guys right now, I changed my name because I made that name back in high school. But I had that name for so long that after a while, I just kind of felt like I was stuck with it and I couldn't change it. And I was just like in too deep, let's say. And it would pop into my mind every once in a while that like, yeah, maybe I should change the name. I feel like it doesn't reflect the brand anymore. And I finally pulled the trigger. I was editing my website recently and I typed in about suspicious tumbleweed and I was like, ugh. So this is going to be StaticTides from now on. You might still see some of the old branding in videos. Of course, my banner over here, I'm hiding it with the mic right now, but the branding back there still says Suspicious Tumbleweed. It's going to take a little bit before I kind of adjust and get new banners and, you know, all of that. So that's what's going on. So before we get into it, I just want to make a quick mention of social media and the way that often we perceive cosplayers on social media, and you know, we rarely see the mistakes that people make. And I know I might sound like a broken record right now because I do know a lot of content creators tend to talk about this because it's kind of important to show our mistakes and show the things that we didn't like and show the things that didn't go according to plan. It happens. We're not perfect. Anyways, I'm gonna stop talking and continue talking about the builds. Home Depot happened to have the PVC tube the exact size I needed, but it does need to be covered in tinfoil to help bounce the lights off of it later. My method for achieving this is to use this double-sided tape for, I think, carpeting. You basically just take the paper off, stick it, and then take the other paper off, and now there's another sticky surface. My plan is to just roll it onto the tube. But this tube won't stand up by itself. It needs an actual sturdy base since there's 4 brackets being made for this. And I can perfectly hide 4 of these shelf brackets inside of the foam ones. So yeah, now that the 4 quarters are marked, I can mark the drill areas. I got some bolts and some nuts to connect these since I don't want pointy ends scratching my sword. Getting that done was fun though. This right here is LED diffusing foam from Red Moon Cosplay Solutions. Moving in larger chunks of your body like this helps with precise, straight cuts. The rectangle is great and all, but I need to cut slits into this to get it around the brackets. And yep, I'm going to need to cut circles at the top too to accommodate the shape of the bracket. Now to cut out the actual foam brackets for this prop. I need 8 of these big pieces, and I really want to puzzle it as much as I can. No! 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 Once I got over that, there's a few more smaller pieces. But these ones have angled cuts. Remember the large pieces I had to cut out? There's going to be top layers to each piece too, and these pieces have tons of filigree. And the reference images for these are extremely hard to understand. Now, I'm highly aware that my Bifrost stand is not screen accurate. First of all, I'm pretty sure there's supposed to be like twice the amount of brackets going all the way around it. I wasn't about to mess with that. It's a stage prop. It's going to be seen from very far away. More importantly here, what's crossing through my mind right now is the fact that I need to cut 8 times, since it's double-sided, all of these little details all over these brackets, and I know I can do it by hand. And then I looked behind me, and an idea did in fact illuminate. So I'm transferring each little section to tracing paper, and then that goes onto clean white paper, because this is what is sitting behind me. Well, not quite this, but the thing that goes with this is the Brother Scan and Cut. This isn't sponsored as I do not have enough subscribers or views, so this is my honest opinion. The Scan and Cut is amazing, mostly due to the scan feature. So I can just scan these and auto-detect the edges and my machine will create a file for me. It took a little bit of getting used to, but I got it to work. And now I can sit back and let it cut out the millions of tiny little bits. Alright, so let's talk about costume contests for a second. Because, like I said, these two props do have some collaborative aspects to them. And that means there's some of the steps that I didn't do myself. Now, usually I wouldn't do this, but considering the fact that I made the axe completely from scratch, the armor from scratch showing also foam work and some thermoplastic work and some resin casting actually, I did all the sewing. I made the two M16s showing some more foam work and the fact that I can replicate something. So given that I've done basically more than an entire costume's worth of costume, it doesn't really matter all that much that I would have involved some friends to collaborate with. So while that's cutting, I'm going to roughly cut the stencil out in order to mark these pieces for where they have to be glued on later. Speaking of glue, I'm going to use this glue. Hold on, let me flip that. This glue. The homie, Parkers and Quinn, told me about it and says it works like contact cement. It's not as strong as contact cement like Barge or Renia, but for this, it's perfect. And since I plan on using a textured primer later, I really don't care if there's a slight glue texture from the overspray. And at this point, I'm thinking to myself about how glad I am that my scan and cut plan worked. It made the amount of time it took to glue it all 0% annoying whatsoever. Also super important that I kept these bits together in their little groups. A little blowtorch to sear the edges and a few more detailed cuts. Mostly because I forgot to check off the inner cut box on the machine earlier. Some heat to open it up and some wood burning stabbies. So what's cool about this circle, and this might be like a little nerdy, is since the Thor movies are kind of like inspired by Norse and Viking things, I wanted to use little circle details because in jewelry found from those regions, there's a lot of like different kinds of stamps. I'll put it up. And these stamps were used as like ways to decorate jewelry, rings and pendants and things like that. So it kind of felt like a little bit of a nod to history, even though what I'm making is highly not historical. And you know what? I'm glad I forgot to check off that inner cut because now I have these pieces that I can detail and then stick back in there. Okay, these strips need to bend, so I'm going to cut a bevel out of them. I'd rather this than just gluing a harsher edge and then having to sand it. And they should match up perfectly to the bends in the outer panels. And so now they get glued on. Let's talk a little bit about hindsight now. I really thought I could do this with such a large piece. Can you spot my mistake? I talk about this all the time. And here I spotted it too because now I laid it flat onto the table. But it wasn't enough even for the other pieces. I often talk about gluing something in a curved shape to help maintain a curve, and that's what happened here by mistake. So what I should have done is used this stuff. This is foam board or foam core. It's essentially two like pretty thick pieces of paper with a foamy. That would have kept my pieces perfectly straight so that when I go to glue them on top, there would just be a hell of a lot less warping. Still possible, mind you, but definitely not this. And listen, I tried to stretch it back into shape, and later on I also do this with the heat gun on all the pieces, but they're never going to be perfectly straight. And this is the time where I started to get pretty discouraged about this build. And like, I beat myself up over these mistakes because I have over 10 years of experience in cosplay at this point, and these are mistakes that I shouldn't be making. And I couldn't really start these pieces over because it's a lot of foam and I didn't want to waste a ton of foam. But listen, I'm all discouraged about it, but in the end, I still think this stage prop is super cool. It hangs out in my bedroom. I see it every day. In the moment, yeah, I was beating myself up over it. And of course, these pieces laid on top will help keep things straight, But I kept on going. A few cuts here and there opened with heat, and now these need to be primed, so on to the other bits. Bits like this circle of foam as the base, and this ring of foam detail. Things like LEDs. And here's collab number 1. These LED strips are wired up and programmed by Wyatt. They're already correctly spaced out for the tube, and all I have to do is remove the backing and stick it on. But I want this to be even more compact, so the wires here need to be secured flat, and packing tape should do the trick. On the subject of cosplay contests, especially in the Master Division, you really are expected to have made the whole costume yourself. Now that doesn't mean that you're also expected to have made your shoes from scratch or built your wig from scratch. You could use a base wig and style it, not a problem. Like, that's perfectly fine. What I'm saying is, it's important to disclose everything about your cosplay. It's a very word of mouth type of community, and a lot of the times the contests are kind of on like a trust basis. But if it's found out that you lied about something major, it's not really gonna look great for you in the future. What I'm saying is, don't enter someone else's costume. Now, even though I made a ton for this cosplay, doesn't mean I'm not going to disclose the things that I didn't do on the Bifrost stand and on the sword that we're gonna go look at later. Now, I mentioned the Master Division. Here in Canada, at least, we have 4 divisions. So we have Novice, Journeyman, Artisan, and Master. Now, in the lower categories, you're not expected to have gone as crazy with the amount of stuff that you did yourself. There's definitely way more leniency the more towards the lower categories that you go, but the higher up you go, the expectations also go up. Again, don't enter someone else's work, but if you did like 70% of the costume yourself, that's fine. That the rest you didn't do yourself. You're still learning, especially in the lower categories. It's expected that you're still learning. Though I will recommend try to do as much as you possibly can yourself, because some of those entry-level cosplayers are insane. They have access to like tutorials and videos and stuff that like we didn't actually have back in the day, and people who came before me had even less. So kind of blows my mind, but yeah. But do not let that discourage you from doing a contest, by the way, because entering a contest shouldn't be for winning. Entering a contest should be to have a good time, meet people, see other people's work, talk about their work, learn a thing or two, get feedback from the judges, which was my favorite part of the Masquerade, and still is my favorite part of the Masquerade. But especially when I was learning, getting that feedback from the judges was like, mwah, and it helped me improve so much. So when it comes to costume contests, just relax, have a good time. And they work. There's also this clip of Roku remote batteries. I have no idea why I'm doing this. Anyways, these LEDs need their diffuser, so time to heat shape it and glue it on. It took a long time to heat shape. It's a big piece. And here's the primer texture I was talking about earlier. Under this masking tape here is just flat Plasti-Dip. And the textured primer is none other than Flex Seal. I tested this on foam in a past video. And all these bits are spray painted gold. And the gold bits are shaded with brown acrylic. Before I can connect the brackets, this gold ring needs to be glued. The straight flat bits are glued on now too, and my footage for the brackets was a little chaotic, but everything was marked and glued on. Of course, we've got these wires still needing to be connected to a switch. And I'm gonna have to ask all of you who know how to do this sort of thing, and who do it often, to shut up. I know this is probably being done wrong or badly, but hey, it worked. Ever heard of T-Rex tape? It looks like duct tape, but it will peel your skin off. Seemed like the perfect option for keeping this flat on the floor, but also keeping my switch secured. And oh my god, it looks so cool in the dark. Thank you so much, Wyatt. With that said, I was still feeling a little bit demotivated about the build, and so I sort of copped out in these parts. It looks bad. And it's just not at all like the reference. I just wanted it to be done at this point. You'll see later though, these parts are okay. A little slicey, a little bit of heat. And now the top part of the stand. This edge is rounded off, and yeah, it is a puzzle piece scrap 10mm foam. That's okay though, because most of the puzzle piece part will be covered. Covered by things intentionally curved this time. The top piece has an extra lip there, and that'll be for the top later. First, pool noodle fries need to be inserted into the tube. This way, I'm not smashing the tip of my sword. Oh, spoilers. Alright, be honest. It looks terrible. The tubes don't match up because of the shifty foam problem. The lines don't match up. It just doesn't look good. I regret some of these choices that were made very impulsively because I was getting fed up and I wanted to see this done. And I was running out of time, quite frankly, as well. Though that's not an excuse. Anyways, time to draw the lines between the LEDs. This is in the reference. But before I can finish that, I have to finish up the top. The weird shapes are just for height. I want a 10mm base to slot in, and the top needs to be shaped in about 4 to 5mm. And you know what? A bowl works great. And this all gets the same steps as the pieces from before. The top part is majorly hot glued in. Small upper brackets were made. No, that's not nail polish. I just don't wear gloves when I paint. Also, I just want to say that all the little complaints I'm making about this prop, they're just me being a baby. I do really like this prop, and I don't want the little complaints that I'm making to devalue the super cool work that Wyatt did in these LEDs. They are magic to me. He was supposed to give me detailed instructions on how to do it, but then instead he wanted to just test everything out, so he ordered everything, put it all together, made a beautiful circuit, and then we kind of had a conversation and we were like, yeah, what's the point in me buying everything if it's already made? It's like, you could just send it. I'll send you money. You could just send it. But yeah, I just wanted to say that the LED work that Wyatt did is beautiful, and don't let any of the I'm being a baby comments say anything otherwise. And these little half tubes I do like. They were very satisfying to add to the surface, and they lined up and fit very nicely. A few more areas need shading, including these lines that'll get blurred with some silver acrylic. Whoa, spoilers! Anyways, here's a clip from my stream. I didn't know where to put this.
See that?
So before we move on to the sword, I do want to say Wyatt does stream on Twitch. I'm going to put the links down below. He streams electronic stuff and chainmail stuff and some cool stuff. He doesn't stream all the time, but he does stream sometimes. So you guys should go throw him a follow. Okay, moving on to the sword. A friend of mine, Daymonkey, told me of this kind of glue to get for this, and I really like this stuff. You just put glue on one side, spray the activator thing on the other side, and squish it together. Oh, by the way, I know my ghoul video is already out, but this is actually my first time working with a 3D print. And I knew I would have to sand it, so I got one of these. And I also got a set of files to use for this because I have to clean up these layer lines. The sander did a really good job, but in with the files now. These 3D printed pieces were sent to me by the Free Heathen. He streams on Twitch as well, and I will link him down below. He mostly does 3D printing and some 3D modeling and some nerd talk. He sent me these pieces to show me what a 3D printer could do and hopefully get me interested in it myself. Well, spoiler alert for past him, I was already interested in it, and at that point I had gotten a machine for Christmas from my dad. Shout out Dad. I'm saying this because I was having a really hard time cleaning up these small details. So, being new to 3D printing, I had like no idea that these layer lines were abnormal. All I had ever heard is that, yeah, you need to sand a 3D print. So I was holding this print going, yeah, I would need to sand this. This is probably what I've been hearing about. Luckily, he then told me that he had printed it really quickly, which means that the resolution, the layer lines are going to be, faster and a lot less smooth. Basically, he wanted to get it out to me as fast as possible. He mostly wanted to show me how 3D printing can be. So that was kind of a relief for me because I was kind of scared that that was the norm. But at this point in time, I happen to have a printer. So I decided, why not give it a shot myself? Good night, printer. Please don't mess up. And it didn't mess up. I'll link the Etsy seller I bought the Heimdall sword model from. Also, I absolutely love these tree supports. I feel bad throwing them in the scrap bin. I also did some experimenting with a blowtorch. So the blowtorch works, but I will say, well, one, you have to be careful with how much heat you're putting, and two, it kind of makes it a little bit too smooth sometimes in some places, so it's probably good to do another pass over it with some sandpaper, just to give it a little bit of a rough texture so that your primer and your paint actually sticks to something and won't just scratch off because the surface is too slick. Anywho, I'm using Bondo for the first time as well. Mixy, 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 mixy. Apply it with something. I was getting annoyed with how hard it was to spread in the amount of time that I had, so yeah, I switched to my fingers. I know I'm not supposed to. Time for some more sanding. Also, while sanding, I learned from someone in my chat that you can check for imperfections by putting your finger in a Ziploc bag. And it's true, for some reason you can feel the surface so much better. No need for this though, this isn't a car or anything. But yes, there was a lot of sanding, and you could see by the state of the table. Scratched up the surface for this little bit that needs to be glued. Some metal rods for support. And a test to see if it fits well with the pommel. And it does. Time to glue. And suddenly, it no longer fits. A bit of confusion later, and I decided to blowtorch the ends of the metal rods and then shove the pommel in. And it worked. Look how cool this is! And also look how cool Sandpaper Man is! We aren't done though. I'm using Automotive Filler Primer to do some final smoothing. Do wear a mask to spray this and sand this, by the way, because it gets very dusty and very gummy. And you can tell by the state of my sandpaper here, so please don't do this to the inside of your lungs. A final layer of thinner primer gets added on, and after that, with some spot correcting sanding, it's good for paint. I need to make this area look like some kind of leather, so I'm base coating it in some brown acrylic. Then a darker shade of brownish gray to shade it all in the little recesses and junctions. The paint is slightly watered down to make it glide a little bit better. The slightly watered down mix also allows me to wipe and blend off the excess. And now with a slightly brighter and warmer brown, I'm highlighting the knots. It'll help them look a little bit separate from the flat piece. Now, I'm not a precision wizard when it comes to paint, and I really wanted to try to paint these little stitches like a sinew-like color. And yeah, those also get shaded. Everything gets shaded, usually. I'm also trying my hand at a little more precision by painting in this a little seam where the leather would be meeting together. And I am so happy with how it turned out. And then I went and messed it all up by using a non-matte varnish. Anyways, Sabotage 80 has a really mirrored chrome paint. I had this one for a very, very long time, so it took ages to dry. Probably don't use over 7-year-old paint. And the rest of the hilt got based in that same gold from earlier, and that one dried normally. Ah, see, there's the shiny varnish that messed up my grip. I ruined my grip. I ruined the paint job I liked so much on my grip because I didn't feel like doing this. That's all I had to do. Later on, I did spray it with a matte spray varnish, and it did save it a little bit, but I still wonder to this day, what would it have looked like had I just gone and used the matte spray varnish to begin with? Anyways, here begins the journey of trying to shade the gold. Nothing I did was turning out the way I wanted to. It's all too dirty or not spreading well, and oil paint was out of the question due to time. I ended up giving up and just letting it be clean. It kind of works for Asgard stuff anyways, but it's really not what I'm used to doing. And here it is. And one more time with the synth lighting. And now, final test, the Bifrost. Now, it only has to work on stage. So the issue isn't whether or not it's going to work on stage, it's whether or not I can properly insert the sword in a timely manner and press the button. And of course, I haven't really practiced it with all the armor on in full costume, so I just had to hope that my aim was true.
Entry number 49 in the Master Division. Behold my stuff! As Thor, battle suitor of Muspelheim, he calls for hasty exit. Only Heimdall is not there to answer. And my really know me a while, and I can really use a fast exit. I do.
Heimdall was an idiot. This job should have made him rich. The Bifrost gives me access to everything the Nine Realms has to offer. Behold! My stuff. I'm particularly fond of these. I pulled them out of a place on Midgard called Texas. I even named them Des and Troy. Because you see, when you put them together, they destroy.
It worked! Mind you, okay, my skit looked a little bit rushed. Keep in mind that we have 60 seconds maximum on stage, and I really wanted to get through the scene as much as I could, and then also have a little bit of a payoff time afterwards, after the sword gets put into the Bifrost stand. So yeah, cut me some slack on the little bit of the rushed nature. But listen, I ended up winning a stage prize. I won a prize in armor workmanship, and I got Best in Class Master Division Stage. This is a big deal for me, because I've always mostly just been a craftsmanship person. I've just always kind of sucked at stage. So getting a prize like this, knowing that I'm getting better at it, I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't. Here's to future Masquerade skits. So how I feel about this costume. This is a costume I feel mentally comfortable in. I don't have to worry about looking good at all times at a convention. I can just kind of be myself. And costumes like that tend to be my favorite ones. So right now, Skurge and the Ghoul, which happen to be my last two costumes that I've made, are my favorite ones to wear, and they're my most comfortable ones to wear. So here's to future projects and hoping that I feel mentally comfortable in those too, though it's not always going to be the case. As always, guys, there are links down in the description. The website is no longer suspicioustumbleweed.com, it is now StaticTides.com, but all the links are updated all across YouTube. I even went and updated almost all of my thumbnails as well. It's been a lot of work, but it's finally slowing down, and I'm almost done with the rebrand. So, of course, there's also a link to the Discord if you want to share the stuff that you've made, whether it be costume related or not. We love seeing things. And speaking of we and seeing things, I do stream on Twitch. There's links down below to that. I stream most days of the week, and here are my Twitch subscriber shoutouts. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate y'all, and I never really know what to say during this portion because I kind of suck at showing thankfulness, but I am. I'm thankful. I just suck at showing it. I don't know where to put my hands. Anyways, thank you so much for tuning in to my Skurge series. It's been a ride, and I don't regret said ride. I'll see you guys next time.